Afternoon, everyone. At this time, I'd like to call the order to meeting for the Planning Commission meeting for tonight. Gina, may I have a roll call, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. Chairman Zarguni,
Present.
Vice Chairman Miller,
Here.
Commissioner York,
Here.
Commissioner Mandel,
Here.
Commissioner Salazar Garza. Here. Commissioner Munoz is absent, and Commissioner Motagi.
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public comments. If anyone would like to speak regarding any general public comments, please come forward to the podium. None. I will close it, and moving on to the approval of the absences for Commissioner Mandel.
Make a motion, we approve the absence for Commissioner Mandel.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, approval of the minutes for October 19, 2022.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to the consent public hearing. Item A.
The agenda in there? That's fine. Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Orozco, City Planner with Development Services. I'm going to be reading into record consent items A, starting with item number 2. These are the plats, Spring Norton subdivision number 3, Block 10, Lot 2C. It's a final replat of .21 acres. Item number 3, the Village at Timbergate, Unit 1, Block 1, Lot 8R, replat of 1.57 acres. Number 4, Nueces River Irrigation Park. This is a preliminary plat of 16.17 acres. Number 5, Butler Addition, lots 1A through 1D, final plat of 9.5 acres. Number 6, Paulstrom's Tract, Block 2, Lot 2, replat of 1.79 acres. Number 7, Mata Addition, Block 1. Item 7 and 8 is a plat and a sidewalk waiver together for Mata Addition, Block 1, Lot 1A, replat of .37 acres. Items 9 and 10 is a plat and a waiver for Laguna Vista Shores, Block 8, Lot 21R, replat of .23 acres. The plats have met the Texas Local Government Code and the UDC regulations. And as far as the waivers, staff recommends approval on those. Staff can answer questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Commissioner, do you have any question for staff regarding any of the items? None. I would like to open the public hearing at this time. Does anyone would like to speak regarding item number 2 to 10? Does anyone would like to speak regarding any of these items? None. I will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a further discussions or a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve items 2 through 10 as presented by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item number B, plat with variance waiver. Number 11.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Andrew Demas with Development Services, reading in our non-consent items for tonight, starting with item number 11, which is a waiver request for a two-ways, or I should say it's two independent one-way cycle tracks regarding the Oso Creek Corner Phase 1 plat. Now, In previous Planning Commission meetings, you have heard both the master preliminary and the preliminary for Oso Creek Corner. As we approach the final, that is why you're hearing the waiver tonight before the final plat is submitted. That being said, as you can see on the center of the screen, this is encompassing entirety of Phase 1. Those familiar with the project, this is a future site of a CCISD elementary school, and eventually will also be a middle school to the southeast. So here's again another zoom-in version of Phase 1 that we're discussing tonight. On your left-hand side of the screen is the blue line indicating the location of the one-way cycle track on both sides of the proposed extension of Oso Parkway. Here is a secondary view to show you the green line in relation to Yorktown as an arterial, the green line signifying again Oso Parkway as it carves through the site being yellow. And this slide shows the location of the site in relation to our mobility plan and bicycle network. Red lines indicate our off-road trails, and again, tonight what we're discussing is the one-way cycle tracks on both sides of Oso Parkway along with Yorktown Boulevard. And here's just a snippet from our mobility plan to show what exactly is a one-way cycle track that contributes to essentially a widened sidewalk. Here's a view of Yorktown, which is one of the proposed roads as part of tonight's waiver request. And of course, we will not have a segment for South Oso Parkway as it has not yet been constructed. So we put together a slide. Mark was kind enough to put together a slide to show where exactly Oso Parkway would be crossing in relation to Yorktown Boulevard. Again, as you'll know, you'll see several slides. We show the plat as it's been submitted to Development Services and, of course, has been reviewed by the Technical Review Committee. And with every waiver that we present to this body, we like to give, of course, a fair and balanced report. So we will show you factors in support of a waiver, which, of course, advocates for not constructing or perhaps an alternative design, versus factors against a waiver means it advocates for construction of both sides of that one-way cycle track, of both sides of Oso Parkway. So starting with factors in support of the waiver, bike lanes on other Oso Parkway have never been constructed, meaning there are segments of South Oso Parkway that we drive on every day that does not have a one-way cycle track on it. So this would be the start of the network from Yorktown Boulevard to match portions of plats that you have already approved on the north side of Yorktown Boulevard that are also under construction. Number 2 is Yorktown Boulevard until you reach the Mud Bridge, which is a bridge that really doesn't have a name as you cross into Flower Bluff, as part of the city bond project, meaning the extension of Yorktown from what we all know as the Mud Bridge to Rodfield Road is going to be widened to a 4-lane road, and that includes sidewalks and cycle tracks. So one of the arguments made by the applicant is that if the city is already in the process of constructing it, why have a segment constructed that will be in advance and not connecting to segments that will eventually be in construction for the entire length of Yorktown? On factors against the waiver, the UDC states that the preliminary plat is consistent with the comp plan, meaning inherently, if a plan calls out for a cycle track to be installed, of course, as we go through the platting process, one of our first requirements is that we enforce the comprehensive plan, which calls for the installation of the bike lanes. Continuing as far as what is in support of the waiver, the location of the proposed project is not an intensely pedestrian area and is more vehicular oriented. While that in some cases may be so, with the idea that it is the location of a future elementary school and middle school at some point, you will have, of course, a large student population connecting to residential subdivisions, meaning knowing our various school districts have very specific busing policies, there are going to be children that live within a close proximity to the school site and may either walk or bike to school. Henceforth, the need for a widened cycle track and sidewalks on both sides of the street. Again, advocating for construction, there is sufficient right-of-way to include the cycle track as Oso Parkway is designated a P1 collector. What does that mean? It means that it is wider than your standard collector of 60 feet of right-of-way at 40 foot of pavement section. In this case, a P1 collector is 80 feet of right-of-way, so you're picking up that extra area to allow for the installation of the cycle facility. Number 4, building these tracks will promote future pedestrian bicycle traffic, meaning as future neighborhoods are built, as we've heard with every sidewalk waiver, when you're on a corner or you're at the beginning of a network, it is the best time to start, because as future plats come in, as you carry down Oso Parkway, those plats will too have to install their segment of cycle tracks. Now, of course, this few slides are just the standard language out of the UDC, letting you know what are some options, why do we even bring sidewalk waivers to the Planning Commission for your decision, what is the need for the waiver and what Planning Commission must do. This is essentially a quick guide to a review criteria of how you determine whether or not to approve or deny a waiver. And then lastly, we have our staff recommendation, which at the top recommends disapproval of the waiver for Oso Parkway. And on the other hand, we are recommending approval of the waiver for Yorktown Boulevard for the reason of, we know it's a city bond project, we know it's very next on the docket, it's been approved, therefore it would make sense that we wouldn't have a developer go and install these facilities if we as a city are going to come in and install right afterwards. But to match and to connect to the very same facility that the city is installing as part of a bond project, that is why we're recommending disapproval on Oso Parkway. And with that, I'd be more than happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dimas. Okay, Commissioner York.
Thank you. Question, so Oso Parkway is a P1 collector. Typically, the P1 collector, the street section requires 8 feet of sidewalk on one side, which is supposed to be the side where the creek is at, and 4 feet on the other. Has that street section been updated, or does that conflict with the bicycle mobility plan?
There is an ongoing discussion with the new infrastructure design criteria manual. It has not been updated, but this is based on the mobility plan and discussions with traffic engineering as the plat has been reviewed.
Okay, so the street section is still the old way? 8
Correct.
and 4. I know you made the comment about the coming from the corner and this being the beginning, but in this case, it's kind of the end because most of the rest of that Oso Parkway all the way back to Cimarron has been developed. There's missing chunks, but have any of those existing chunks, the more recent ones, constructed both sides, or are they the 8 and 4?
They're the 8 and 4.
Okay.
For the most part. Of course, there are some that received waivers in the past and they have 4 on both sides, but for the most part, it is the 8 and 4 design as in the UDC.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
If you could flip over to
Sorry,
slide.
one last question.
Go
Can
ahead.
you
Sure,
just
please.
confirm what the applicant's asking for? Is he asking to eliminate the entire cycle track or just to do what was done previously, which is 8 foot on one side and 4 on the other?
That's a great question. So, of course, when you apply for a waiver, you're almost asking for all or nothing. So it is asking for a waiver from construction. However, I'm sure as the applicant will speak, there was a discussion of a potential alternative that kind of came up in late conversation. So in speaking with the applicant, I advise that, of course, when you make your case for a waiver, that is your opportunity, that if you wish to present an alternative design, that is your time to do so.
Perfect. Thank you, because that wasn't clear in there. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Miller.
On slide number 4, if you could flip to there.
Yes, sir.
All of these, well, we've got a one-way cycle track, both sides, off-road, multi-use trail, I assume that's supposed to be trail, and bike boulevards identified on this map. What's there now, and, I mean, is there any way you could kind of mark up what's currently there? Because I would imagine that nothing from what we're talking about all the way back to, I guess, Rod Field is constructed or in place, correct?
Correct. You're going to have just small segments. Most of what you see on the screen of Oso Parkway, really what's only constructed is going to be in this, let me clear the screen. And this segment here is constructed pretty much the remainder of it has not yet been constructed. So that's, there's two sides to the coin, as Commissioner York said. Some can call it at the beginning of the network and others could call it the end, because there are portions that have been constructed further down as you get to Kings Crossing. But as you cross through what's called Royal Creek, which are some preliminary plats still in play, and then connecting to eventually the subject property behind Starlight Estates, that is when you'll reach the eventuality of Oso Parkway. Oso Parkway is unique that it's kind of been built in pieces, so not all the time does it connect. The second part of your question of what has already been built, there are some segments that cross through behind Veterans Memorial High School that have connected, which on the map would be in this area, through bicycle trails as alternative means to connect to Yorktown through the Del Mar South campus. So hard part of any plan, and I say that as a former member of the planning department, is you have to outline on paper how everything connects, but it takes time for those pieces to end up connecting, and you have to rely at times on replats and eventual plats that will come in. So it creates kind of a juxtaposed network.
But everything to the south and to the west of Yorktown, none of that's been constructed. Is any of it been, has any of those plats been approved to where any portions of Oso Creek Parkway is going to be constructed there?
What is shown on the map, you'll have Rancho Vista and you'll have Royal Creek, which is on a plat extension, hasn't been recorded yet. Starlight is on their preliminary plat to eventually go further south, but has not been final platted. So it's still very much at a conceptual phase.
And for illustrative purposes, can you identify the location of the southeastern the elementary middle school?
Sure, it would be roughly right there.
Okay. All right. What other questions do I have? And this, the cycle track. So we've got a 6-foot landscape buffer, then we've got a 6-foot one-way cycle track, and I assume that that's constructed 4-inch concrete or something?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And then an additional 5-foot ADA sidewalk. How do they do the textured divides between the cycle track and the sidewalk?
Not all the time. Sometimes there'll be a slight raised lip, just to give you an indicator. That's one of the issues that we came up way back when writing the mobility plan, is to create separated bike lanes, because you're going to have an interaction of different modes of transportation. While for many years we had 0 bicycle lanes, this was a great first step. So there may be some small texture to let you know that you're crossing, but there's other than the paint indicator, there's not really a true, what I would call, separation. There's not a curb that separates pedestrian traffic from bicycle traffic.
And it's in this picture, I don't know whether it's colored because to delineate the different lanes, but is it actually a painted surface?
Yes, it is a painted surface.
And striped as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that pretty much covers my questions. Oh, and the current standard on other segments of Oso Parkway where you've got an 8 and a 4, was the 8 intended to be a shared
A
surface?
multi-use facility, so that would include scooters, cycles, pedestrians, joggers, you name it, to share that 8-foot space.
Okay. All right, that's what I got.
Thank you. Anyone else have any question for staff at this time? None, I will open
Thank
the
you.
public hearing. Is there anyone else beside the applicant that would like to speak regarding this item at this time? Okay. Applicants here.
All right,
If you would state
so
your name and
Moses
number.
Mostagasi with MPM Homes, MPM Development, 8017 Barley Dock. So just to kind of revert back to both of y'all's questions, I wanted to clarify something. Andrew, can you come and play with the thing for me? So I've been blessed to do all the OSO parkways in Corpus over the last 20 years. And as Andrew stated, if you look at the OSO parkway between, and I've got pictures and I'll put them on for y'all, but from Everhart to Staples has a 4-foot sidewalk on one side and 8-foot there. Through Keene's Crossing, same ordeal, 4-foot sidewalk on one side, 8-foot sidewalk there. Through a small segment of about 500 feet of Queens Crossing, there's also going to be a 4-foot sidewalk and an 8-foot sidewalk. All of Rancho Vista and Starlight, which is the connectivity point to the south side of the rest of this property, has a preliminary plat approved with a 4-foot sidewalk and an 8-foot sidewalk. The Oso Parkway that I did where the Big Bird is has a 4-foot sidewalk and an 8-foot sidewalk. This would literally be the first Oso Parkway that has a 10-foot sidewalk and a 10-foot sidewalk. It's never been constructed here in Corpus. The idea came from one staff member in traffic. He forced this upon us, and it doesn't make any sense. So when you show these blue lines of having one-way cycle tracks, you're actually not going to have one-way. You're not going to have them on both sides, on Cimarron, on Rodfield. You're not, nowhere on Oso Parkway does this have this. So to all of a sudden say, you want me to take my 4-foot sidewalk and connect it to a 10-foot sidewalk and take my 8-foot sidewalk and connect it to a 10-foot sidewalk in this one particular area of town because of one staff member, it doesn't make any sense. This was what we were told to do. And just like Andrew mentioned, no other cross-section of Oso Parkway requires this. The city hasn't updated its section. It's in update, but until it passes and becomes ordinance, the city shouldn't be requiring us to do things that aren't official. So what I'm requesting here, even though the waiver request was to put 2 5-foot sidewalks on both sides, we would like to change that and stick to our 4-foot sidewalk on one side, which would be on the commercial/apartment side of the site. Put the 8-foot sidewalk on the school side and the Oso Parkway side and give that mobility to the kids. But Oso Parkway in its origin was constructed to be along the Oso. Again, this was one individual staff member forced us to put the Oso Parkway in its current location and not along, do we only get 3 minutes? Okay. Not along the Oso. Normally the Oso Parkway 8-foot pathway was to promote the walking accessibility. If you ever go to these parks, you'll notice people are walking on them, but you can have your shared quote unquote bike path with the 8-foot. People have done it. So I'm here to answer any questions. I wanted to clarify because I think the way Andrew said it was that these aren't made. They're not made, but they're going to have 4-foot and 8-foot. You can't go back and change those plats. You can require it here, but just like Mr. York said, you're almost at the end, and the 2 other ones that he highlighted further up, which were just recently finished, have a 4-foot and 8-foot sidewalk. So you're going to blend the 2, and it's not going to make really any sense for us. So we're asking for a 60-foot right-of-way, which would still allow you to get your 4-foot and 8-foot sidewalk. City wouldn't be losing anything. They would actually be gaining because they wouldn't have to maintain that right-of-way. It's a challenge for the city to maintain any right-of-ways as it is right now. So I'm here to answer any questions and any concerns.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Miller?
I missed it. What's the, with this particular 5-foot and 6-foot one-way on either side bike lanes, what is that right-of-way section?
Can you pull up slide 9?
Yes, that'll be part of P1 Parkway Collector.
It's hard to see those cross sections, isn't it?
Well, right now, Moses is asking for
Can we
a
pull the flag?
60-foot, so what?
It's an 80-foot.
Do we have the plat?
Parkways were always designated as an 80-foot. Oso Parkway is the only street that has a 40-foot back-to-back as a parkway that's designated as an 80-foot. Even though C1 collectors, they're not called parkways because of the section design of the actual road for the trip count, meaning the construction portion is a thicker, more advanced street to have more traffic. Same 40-foot back-to-back, curve to curve. You'll have your 3-foot gap between your curve and your sidewalk, and then you'll be able to put your sidewalk, and you can fit everything in 60 feet. This is going to help also CCISD and those kids, because what we're trying to do is create more bus routes, be a little bit more efficient with what they're trying to do out there. If you put a 20-foot right-of-way on their property, it's just basically dead land that they're going to have to mow. The 20-foot right-of-way is just grass. The city doesn't come back and utilize that right-of-way in any sense. So in reality, you can get your 4-foot sidewalk, your 40-foot back-to-back street, your 8-foot sidewalk in a 60-foot right-of-way. No reason to be a 80-foot. Andrew can attest to this. I have dealt with Oso Parkways for 20 years of my life, unfortunately. It's something that we're talking through the UDC updates to see how we can modify this Oso Parkway, because it doesn't all connect. It is choppy. Most land developers avoid it because of the problems that come with it, but we've constructed every one in our developments. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other question for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out in Table 821C of your report, the sidewalk it's 5 and 8 feet. It's the typical, not 4 feet.
So
And that's what's in the cross-section, the 5-foot
So it is the 5 feet
sidewalk
and
is
8
what
feet?
Moses is
and we don't
representing.
mind doing the 5-foot. This is another thing that I'm dealing with. The IDM got updated in March, somehow shows a 5-foot sidewalk. The UDC shows a 4-foot sidewalk, so we have a city issue with 2 documents not matching. Every Oso Parkway sidewalk in Corpus right now is a 4-foot sidewalk, and every neighborhood that any land developer does in Corpus right now is a 4-foot sidewalk. But this just is something else that the city is going to have to work through to match their IDM with their UDC.
Would you be open to the 5-foot?
The 5-foot isn't a problem. Putting it on the other side, 1 foot isn't going to make a difference, and it's still going to fit inside the 60-foot right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
You have a question for applicant? Or?
Yeah, I got one question. So are you proposing a 60-foot right-of-way in lieu of the 80-foot?
Yes, our variance, as of right now, would ask for a 60-foot right-of-way. I'll let this body decide if a 5-foot is more important than a 4-foot on one side. An 8-foot on the other side is what we're looking for, so we can fit everything in the 60 feet. But if you want it to match with the rest of Oso Parkway to the south, all the way really to Everhart, and no, actually all the way to Weber, it would have to be a 4-foot sidewalk.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Question for staff on that. So
If you, let me make sure, see if there's anyone else that wants to speak.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item?
I would just, if I may, on the waiver request, it says that, I'm looking at the letter, and it says we're requesting to put in the 5-foot walk as requested, but not the bike lane. So that was our understanding. We didn't know that there would be a waiver of the right-of-way. And I'm just referring to Exhibit B in your report.
Yes. So it is a 5-foot.
I'm just looking at the written request to us, so.
I just wanted. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item? None, I will close the public hearing and entertain further question for staff. Commissioner York.
So regarding the right-of-way, we've got a sidewalk waiver in front of us. If the applicant's asking to reduce the right-of-way width, can that be part of this same request, or does that need to be, how does that work?
Really, it
procedurally?
really should be a separate and independent request if, the applicant wishes to propose an alternative for the construction of the sidewalks, that is one thing. If to shrink the right-of-way is technically a construction waiver.
Is that, it's done by plat waiver, right, that comes to this
Correct.
body? Can we address that today, or are we not allowed to do that?
I'll defer to our attorney, but I have a feeling the answer will be, it really needed to be a separate request that was published and notified, chance for people to speak. I
And there-
haven't heard planning commission, and this is just based on my history with the city, heard a second and independent waiver on top or kind of tacked on to a separate waiver.
So I'll let Buck confirm that, but you said their final plat is coming the next meeting? Is that correct?
I believe so. The final plat is in process of review as we speak, the phase one.
So they, what I'm getting is they could come back with the final plat and have that
Yes.
plat waiver?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we have not had an opportunity to review a reduction right away either until this evening.
Yeah, I would concur that it needs to be within the application.
So it has to be separate, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Okay. Anyone else has any question for staff regarding this item? None. At this time, I will entertain a motion from any commissioners.
I will make a motion that we approve the waiver of the Yorktown cycle trails as recommended by staff, and approve a waiver on the Oso Parkway in lieu of the bike lanes, a 5-foot sidewalk on one side and an 8-foot sidewalk on the other.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item number 12, new zoning.
All righty, thank you, commissioners. Tonight's first zoning case is case 1022-01, Sun George Contracting and Development Company. The request is from the FR zoning district to the CG2 General Commercial District. The location of the subject property is on the east side of Rodfield Road, south of Woldridge, and north of Saratoga. Now, looking at the surrounding land uses to the north and south, you have some low-density remaining single-family homes. Some are zoned CG2 and two-family, which is duplex zoning. To the east, you do have a drainage corridor, which I'll flip back so you can kind of see between the aerial image and the information. There is a drainage corridor that separates the single-family neighborhood from the subject property. And to the west, across Rodfield, you do have commercial properties that are zoned CN1 neighborhood commercial. Of the 36 notices mailed out, we received 0 in favor and 0 in opposition. And then this slide is just to take an opportunity to kind of show, as we internally as staff discuss every zoning case, to come to a conclusion of how we make our recommendation. This is to show kind of the breakdown of properties that are zoned CG2 versus CN1, why each zoning district is applied as it is. You will typically see CG2 clustered around a major intersection, as that is where you have the most intense commercial uses. As you travel north to another secondary intersection, which is a little bit, Woodridge, of course, is not the size and scale of Saratoga, so you have the application of the CN1 neighborhood commercial district, because you will typically have lesser intense commercial land uses. So it's more in line with the surrounding neighborhood. Based on the information as you saw in the staff report, we, of course, take a look at the character of the surrounding neighborhood, our future land use map, all of our compendium of the comprehensive plan, and came to the conclusion that we are recommending, in lieu of the general commercial district, the CN1 neighborhood commercial district as a better fit for this subject property. So while technically we are recommending denial, we are proposing an alternative recommendation of approval of the CN1. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner York.
Thank you. I got 2 questions. First, the staff recommendation for CN1 in lieu of, was that presented to the the applicant, are they aware of that, or?
Yes, when we distribute the materials to notify for the meeting, so the Friday before Planning Commission, we distribute all the materials, including the staff report and the presentation to the applicant, so they will have a copy and a chance to review and comment.
Okay, and then, be honest, my opinion, it could go either way. I got no problem with CG2. I used to live right across the street, and they could use some commercial in that area. But can you tell us, to refresh our memories, what the difference is between CN1 and CG2? What's allowed, the uses?
Great question. So the most common difference, of course, the applicant, as part of their submittal, their what we call their land use statement, which is essentially what I like to tell the customer. It is your chance to tell the story of why you're requesting a specific change of zoning. Their ultimate goal is for retail uses, office uses, and restaurants. All of those uses are allowed without restriction, other than, of course, your standard setbacks and height requirements are allowed in the CN1 district. The CG2 district is just that. It is the next level of intensity above that neighborhood commercial level, meaning that is where you're allowed to have your bars and nightclubs, your car dealerships, your mini storage. To a degree, car dealerships can have paint and body work attached to it. You're going to have uses that have that level of intensity that you typically don't want to put right next to a neighborhood or mid-block. You want to group those around a major intersection because you will not have residents other than maybe a few apartment complexes directly saddling that use at the intersection. So that is why we cluster general commercial where we can around intersections. And then as you travel mid-block, scale down to your neighborhood commercial because that is where you will have adjacent single-family or multifamily developments.
Thank you.
Andrew, I have a question. Could you go back to that zoning slide this one right here? So right next to this property, the zoning is CG2, which it is Navy Army Credit Union building, if I'm
They're
not
a
making
complex,
a mistake. A
correct, from
complex.
Saratoga to mid-block essentially.
And right across of the subject property, this long-looking building is, the land is zoned CG2. Is this been constructed or is this a land? Like, can you verify, like, is there a raw land, like vacant land right across of this subject property, or has been already been built?
Across is CN1, which does have commercial development.
No. The one I'm talking about, the CG2, the kind of like a L-shaped one, right? On the
You're
side.
talking about this
Yes.
area here. There are some pockets of multifamily and commercial that have been built, and then in the center, you have a vacant portion as you hit the curve before you hit the shopping center that fronts upon Saratoga.
So there are some vacant property on this piece available that they can build for?
Correct.
Okay. Because I'm just trying to figure out the exact reasoning of why the staff did not support CG2 on this. It is on Rodfield. The future growth of Rodfield is pretty significant, and I do believe that it needs.
I can tell you just the story of the Navy Army building, and, I'm a Navy Army customer, so I won't say anything bad about them, but I can tell you that when the construction of the 5-story building did ruffle some feathers of the adjacent neighborhood because they feel like there's a building towering in their backyard.
Okay.
There were some disputes over easements and people having access. Police had to get involved. I always say I learn more from the controversial cases because you understand just how neighborhoods end up interacting with each other. The lesson I learned from that one is very much so reinforces the idea of why we place CN1 mid-block. CN1 does have some height restrictions attached to it that will have more of, even in an office concept, you're maybe only going to be around a 3-story building, so you won't have a line of sight into folks' backyard. So it's the old saying is you can't put a square peg in a round hole, but a round peg will fit in a square hole. So it's 6 one way, half dozen the other. That yes, it kind of struggled with the decision of CG2 versus CN1, but at the end of the day, the right fit is CN1.
Okay.
And I just want to add, at the intersection, I guess it's Saratoga, right, at Rodfield?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, those are 2 major roadways, right? And so that's where you would want to cluster your more intense commercial uses. Again, with this property, you have CN1 across the street. So you can see there's already been a diminution of the intensity of zoning there. And as you go further north, that's also CN1. So again, the reasoning would be to cluster it at the greater intersection.
Thank you. Anyone else have any question for staff?
Yeah, just
Commissioner
north
Ure?
of here, isn't that property, it's not shown, there's no highlight in red, but isn't that also CN1, the southeast corner?
Yes, there's a bank property, which I believe is that corner
First
here,
Community.
that has an ATM today. It hasn't, the bank hasn't yet been built, but that should also be labeled as CN1.
Okay.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing regarding item number 12. Does anyone would like to speak regarding this item? None. I will close the public hearing and entertain, further discussions or a motion for this item. Commissioners?
I guess I got a question for staff, so I was hoping the applicant would be here, but
Is the applicant here?
yeah, just want to know if the applicant is
Let me just.
okay with the
applicant,
CN1.
let me open the public hearing back so applicant can. Are you representing the applicant or? Okay. If you would please
Tom
state
Stephen
your
with
name.
Munoz Engineering. Yes, Michael.
Is the applicant okay with staff's recommendation of CN1 in lieu of CG2?
We would prefer the CG2, but we also understand staff's reasonings. But CG2 would better fit the overall development there and give us the most flexibilities. But we would be okay with CN1.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing and I will entertain a motion on this one.
I'll make a motion that we deny the CG2 requested zoning in lieu of CN1.
We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 13.
Okay, so for tonight's main event, we have 0922-04, item 13 on your agenda, the Ariba Development rezoning request. The request is from the RS6, Single Family 6 District, to the RM1 and RM2 District. So as you can see on the center of the screen, there is a bold line that separates each tract, which is roughly about 10 acres in size. The southern, the center portion would be to RM2, and to the north would be RM1. This is in the Annaville area, just before you hit the exit on I-37 to Violet Road. So with every other case, we do look at the surrounding land uses around your subject property. What is the character of the neighborhood, so to speak? And with that, you'll see a host of single-family RS6 zoning around the subject property. The future land use indicates for it to remain as low-density residential, which is essentially your 3 units per acre or less. To the north, you have a kind of defunct mobile home park that has been in existence since the 1960s when the area was annexed. To the south, you have a vacant property that is zoned CN1, and on both sides to the east and west, you have low-density residential zoned RS6. Again, mentioning to the north half of the Tract 1, that is a request to the RM1 district, which constitutes a density of 22 units per acre. Based on the size of the subject property, creates 127 dwelling units at maximum build-out of what the UDC will allow. On Tract 2, which is 4.397 acres in size, RM2 allows a build of 30 units per acre, which again calculates to roughly 132 units, which is the maximum allowance of the UDC by density. Of the 32 notices mailed out, we received 3 in opposition, which is roughly just under about 12.5% from individual property owners that surround the subject property, 0 in favor. Now, I prepared a few slides because ultimately in our internal staff discussion, our biggest concern was traffic. As you approach the intersection of the Interstate 37 exit and entrance ramp as you approach Violet Road, Sessions Road is at the very midpoint of that interchange. So the question was, when you have an older road, a Sessions Road, it's not the widest road in the world, how is that going to interact with traffic, especially if you create a demand like an apartment complex, adding additional traffic already to not the widest road in the world. And here's a clearer view, a little bit more of a zoom in. So from the very edge of the exit ramp, it's roughly 300 feet till you approach Sessions Road. And from Sessions Road, if you were turning right, and let's say you wanted to get on Interstate 37, you have roughly 92 feet to get to the beginning of that solid line. Not everybody follows the solid line, but at least if everyone who follows traffic laws, to get to that solid line is 92 feet. That is not exactly a lot of room to work with, especially if you have traffic. Even though you have signs posted to exit at 45, 50 miles an hour, people do not exit at that speed as much as I wish they did. So you're having to contend with either entering 37 across 3 lanes of traffic at a high rate of speed or exiting 37 onto Sessions Road at a pretty good amount of speed, crossing 3 lanes before you have to make a hard right turn. Now, Sessions Road itself is a 43-foot right-of-way today with 20 feet of pavement. It currently has roadside ditches, no sidewalks. It has a PCI score of 60. Now, what is a PCI score? That stands for Pavement Condition Index. That is the measurement in which traffic engineering and our streets department sees at what's called the magic number of 50. Are you going to fall into a category where an entire street needs to be reconstructed, or are you at a level above 50 in which it can be through routine maintenance? The last maintenance done was back in 2002 for the street that was constructed in 1966. The subject property in itself, from the edge of the RM1 recommendation, or the request, I should say, all the way to the edge of 37, since the property owner owns that property as well, is roughly a quarter mile. So it is a significant amount of frontage onto Sessions Road. Now, Sessions Road is, on paper, on the UTP, considered a C1 collector, which is 60 feet of right-of-way and 40 feet of pavement. So roughly what exists today is half of what that pavement section should be. Now, I'm working off a little bit of older numbers. According to the UTP today, the maximum capacity is 3,000 average daily trips. Now, starting this month, there is a new infrastructure design criteria manual that will be coming out from our friends in engineering, and that is upgrading it to a maximum capacity of 8,000 average daily trips. So as you read your report, there was an updated slide that shows the difference of the new IDM versus what the UTP states today, UTP meaning Urban Transportation Plan. Now, as you can see, it's a bit of a read. We had to go through a lot of factors to figure out what would work best in this scenario. So, of course, the request is inconsistent with future land use map right off the bat. The proposed RM1 and RM2 district is a high-density residential use. We had to go through a series of calculations to find out what exactly is kind of a healthy density, because we do know the northwest area of the city needs housing, first and foremost. There is industrial expansion occurring on the other side of the bay. Those folks need a place to live. Obviously, the shortest drive will be to the Annabelle and Cal Island area. So we don't want to stifle economic development. Taking into account traffic, as you know, as I mentioned, Sessions Road is not the widest or, unfortunately, the most maintained road in the city. So that is going to add cost to the applicant to widen Sessions Road to the full C1 condition as part of their plat. And I'll get into a few more details about that in just a second. Based on the original UTP numbers of 3,000 average daily trips, by calculating the maximum build-out of all of these units, including what's zoned CN1 today, we were looking at 4,300 average daily trips, which was putting it at 140% capacity. Now, keep in mind, those are old numbers before the new infrastructure design manual is now coming out, with that bar being raised to 4,000 to 8,000 average daily trips. And I know it's a lot of detail, so I hope I'm not losing you. So as an alternative recommendation, we as staff recommended denial of going to the RM1 and RM2 district for the obvious reasons. However, we always try to find a way to compromise and come up with a good method of advocating to what the applicant is requesting, having multifamily uses without saying this land just has to stay vacant, Sessions Road never gets improved, and we just end up with status quo. There has to be a good balance that benefits both sides. So in discussions with the applicant, his goal is to obtain 280 apartment units. That is, at the end of the day, the objective. So do we then say, okay, within your 10 acres that you're applying for, you have to fit 280 units, which is roughly about the density of RM1 and RM2 mixed as applied. Or we as staff are recommending that all 14 acres, including what is currently zoned CN1 today, also owned by the applicant, to disperse the 280 units along that entire segment. So you're not clustering too many units too deep onto Sessions Road, and you're having more of a healthy mix of where exits will be set up to meet fire requirements and how they would exit onto Sessions Road closer to 37 rather than having to put driveways deeper into the neighborhood. So looking at buffer yards, that means on that item 2, you will still have to install buffer yards as you interact with the surrounding properties to the northeast, to the north and west, which are the standard 10-foot buffer yards with 10 points, which is right out of the UDC. You will still need to meet the standard building height requirements of, for every foot you go above 13 feet, you must set 1 foot off of the property line. That's what's called our 1-to-2 rule, which is what we apply for every apartment complex when it's adjacent to single-family zoning. In that case, most designs of apartment complexes use parking as their buffer, so you will always typically meet that separation requirement. However, that prevents from buildings being built too close to a property line where folks may feel a little bit of their privacy being questioned as you may have upper stories looking into their backyard. That's the reason why the 1-to-2 setback exists. The next portion is involving Sessions Road itself. So we understand that obviously there's going to be quite a bit of expense during the plating process to upgrade Sessions Road to that 40-foot pavement section. And looking at the conditions of Sessions Road that is today, it wouldn't make sense that you're going to just tack on an extra 20 feet. It's not as simple as you have 20 feet today, I'm just going to add another 20, I have 40. When you do that, you do have to go back and regrade the entire street to create a new crown so drainage drains appropriately. We've learned that lesson many a time with other street maintenance projects. So one of the further discussions was that we would allow Sessions Road in our recommendation to remain at a rural street section, which means it would be 26 feet of pavement. You would still have to give the 60 feet of right-of-way as part of your street dedication during plat, but you would stay at the 26 foot, and that would have to be brought up to the most recent standard, meaning it cannot stay in the condition it's in. That allows the applicant to make the improvements to Sessions Road without having to take on doubling the size of the street. As Sessions Road is essentially a dead-end road with little chance of development to the north because of floodplain issues, there's not too much of a chance that you'll have another development of this size or scale fronting on this street. So we felt that was a good compromise. And then lastly, one of the hardest parts, I would think, and most challenging.
Can I, it
Yes.
says 40 feet in here on the Sessions Road bullet point, and you're saying 26 feet?
Yes, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It would be 40 foot of pavement to the rural street section, meaning you keep your roadside ditches. You won't
Okay.
have to put in
Thank
curb
you.
and gutter and sidewalks. So thank you, Knight, I appreciate it. And then lastly, Interstate 37 was probably the biggest kind of heartburn that I had reviewing the case. And that means because you have such a short reaction time getting from 37 onto Sessions Road, which again is not the widest road in the world, and then exiting off of Sessions back onto 37. So where the red line you see, and I'll show another slide of what that would look like, you would have a series of delineators, meaning to break up traffic to prevent folks from exiting 37 and being able to turn right onto Sessions, meaning if you wanted to access Sessions Road, you would have to exit at McKinsey and stay on the frontage road. Vice versa, if you were wanting to enter 37 from Sessions, you would have to go to the violet exit, or I should say violet intersection, and continue on to merge back onto 37. It prevents folks from having to essentially throw out the anchor to make a right turn or step on the gas just to get on. And we know at rush hour that is not a good situation to be in. So all of the traffic data that supports it in working with the applicant, he did conduct a one-day traffic study which roughly counted 662 vehicles with an AM peak of 11 trips and a PM peak of 5. So on Tuesday, September 27th, the count was 662 cars used Sessions Road. Why is that important? Part of that was the reason of accounting for the surrounding neighborhood. Do they truly use Sessions Road? Now, one-day count is not a pattern, it's a count. It's just that. It's somebody with a clicker saying, this is how many cars trip. That's not to say it's not a good study, it's not to say that it's not a valid point. It's to say that one day does not denote a pattern. So part of that can be chalked up to folks that maybe have gotten used to the very situation of Sessions Road and use McKinsey to access 37 rather than having to deal with this intersection. You don't really know because that takes a full study, traffic impact analysis being conducted. It is only kind of our best guess. Continuing on, again, the questions coming up about what would maximum build out, why are we requesting 14 versus 10? Let's say we said yes to the RM1 and RM2, what would that look like? At the center of the screen, you would roughly have a maximum build out at 37 units per acre for the CN1 area. That creates roughly 165 units for the RM1 proposal. That's 127 units, and for the RM2 portion, that's 131. So the applicant's goal, again, is to get to 280. If you were just to grant the change of zoning at face value, you would essentially be allowing by code 423 units. Again, good idea to have a special permit. The goal is to get to 280, which is more around the halfway mark of 423. That's far better of a compromise than just a straight rezoning to those districts. It still allows the developer to build the units without being able to build at maximum build-out capacity. And as you can see in the report, I gave various scenarios of what it looks like today versus a special permit, and that is why ultimately, in discussions with the applicant, we settled on that 280 unit mark with the required improvements to Sessions, and that they coordinate. We can't mandate that they improve TxDOT right away, but at least make an attempt to coordinate some form of traffic management of how Sessions Road interacts with 37. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Commissioners, question for staff. Commissioner Target.
So keeping it at the zoning that it is, how many dwellings would you be able to put on there right now?
It would be, let's see, for the portion, it'd be 127 for what's requested at RM1 and 131 for RM2. So you're getting at 258.
250 if they were to just leave it right now the way it is. So
Now that's,
Sorry if I may interrupt. Are you talking about the current zoning?
current zoning
The
that
current
is.
zoning is R6 on this property right now.
correct. So at RS6,
It's two dwelling per, or four, max.
you're gonna get at around 7-ish dwelling units per acre. What would that look like?
About 55.
Correct. I think that's on one of my tables. In fact, I have a table I can share with you that went through multiple scenarios. Because I, like y'all, try to think, okay, well, how would this ultimately play out? If you were to do all RS6, you're going to have 7.26, that is roughly 106 units on the 10 acres. And that's in addition to the 163 units that exist on the neighborhood. Now, the engineer and I, of course, we can draw lines as we see, and what I mean by when I say that, I may draw a line that may incorporate 5 more houses or 10 more houses than the applicant may. So it's subjective, in which you can try to guess which neighborhood and cul-de-sac is more than likely going to interact with Sessions versus going north to McKinsey. Again, it's 6 one way, half dozen the other, and you can have some numbers that will fluctuate. The idea, what I was trying to come up with, is what would work best on Sessions, keeping in mind the existing homes at kind of worst case scenario. Because as planners, that's what we have to think of. We can hope for the best, we have to prepare for the worst.
I just have a quick question, Andrew. I'm not an engineer by all means, but are you saying they're getting on a RS6 7.5 lots per acre?
Roughly 7.25. Now, that's not
I'm very
taking.
curious to see a layout. Or preliminary
And
layout.
that's exactly the point. That is just the pure calculation of dividing up 14.62 acres at 6,000 square foot lots. That is not taking out the 20% for infrastructure. So that
But we
number.
have to factor that. I mean,
Well,
every
and that's,
subdivisions we
this
have
is
to have.
purely looking at UDC numbers. So sometimes I find that I can lose folks when explaining to them if I start saying, well, I'm taking 20% out there and 10% here.
Yeah,
it
but that
starts to.
respectfully, if I may say, is a wrong figure to be discussing it, because there's, and again, I could be wrong and I like to see it, there's no way on 14 acre, I would think 7.5 acre, 7.5 lots per acre, get it on a RS6 on a 6,000 square feet, because obviously there's gotta be roads and all that sort of thing. So I just wanna see a little bit more accurate data that reflects on that, because 7.5, that would be pretty amazing. Any developer will be very happy.
And again, much like we've had discussions in the past on multifamily developments, the code may say you can get 30 units an acre, but once you factor in parking, landscaping, the drainage pattern, buffer yards, you're going to have really a much lower density. I always try to start the conversation of exactly what does the UDC allow? What is the worst case scenario density-wise? And then, yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with you. You can start to whittle away at that number once you take away percentages for drainage and buffers and easements that may exist. There is a fairly large wastewater easement that crosses through the property. That's obviously going to work against density. That is why, at the end of the day, the code may allow 400 units, but 280 might well be the more reasonable factor of what will ultimately be constructed. Henceforth, why we're recommending the special permit.
Okay. Commissioner Mutargi, you got your question answered?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Miller.
What would the delineators look like? Are we talking signage? Are we talking?
If everybody knows the intersection of Everhart, that next to the Best Buy, those are the poles that are roughly 3 feet. They're kind
okay,
of plastic.
okay.
Obviously, they can't be a hard type of facility, because if traffic collides with it, you don't want to put a concrete structure. But it is, for the most part, will keep folks on the right side of the line.
But from what I'm looking at here, I mean, you're going to have an opening in there somewhere, right? And is it just going to make it more dangerous for somebody trying to circumvent the?
That's part of the struggle. So one of the calculations when we kind of had our internal discussion is as you exit, so the way that these delineators would work, it would be right on these white lines, the broken line, to prevent traffic. So your
Got it.
folks that are already on here can enter and exit as needed. The most concerning thing I had, of course, other than just the sheer volume of traffic, was thinking back to middle school. We all had to learn how reaction time is calculated. Time equals distance over speed, which means if I travel at 65 miles per hour and I'm covering 300 feet, I only have 3 seconds to cross 3 lanes of traffic at a higher rate of speed, including braking time to make a right turn. Similarly, to exit Sessions Road, I have a whopping 1 second to cross 92 feet and achieve highway speed crossing 3 lanes of traffic. Now, mind you, that's not accounting for weather conditions. That's not accounting for rush hour. This is just on a sunny day, no traffic, best case scenario.
But everybody exits 37 at 35 miles an hour
Of
per
course.
the yellow sign, right?
They follow all traffic laws. You know, the police don't even have to manage. It's safe.
That's what I
yes,
thought.
Yes, sir.
I guess the other question that I have is, does TxDOT have the jurisdiction to trump whatever this body says as
Yes.
far as land
At
use?
the end of the day, yes. And I had conversations with our area engineer. Of course, he said that it would have to probably go up the chain of command, even all the way to Austin, to see if that's even possible. That is why, as much as I would like to say it's a good idea, it should just be a decision. We changed the language to say coordinate with TxDOT, because we know at the end of the day, TxDOT runs its show how it runs its show. And if it chooses to say no to delineators, we have to respect that decision.
But if they say, TxDOT couldn't, if this body approved the zoning and the plat got approved and TxDOT just said, no, we're not going to do the delineators, I mean, would all the teeth that we're putting in this today kill the development?
No, they would still, it would just be a recommendation for coordination. They could still build 280 units. It would not prevent them from achieving their development objective. Now, TxDOT, from what I understood in conversations, already made it clear not to give them a driveway permit along 37. So the development as it fronts today could not have direct access right off the subject property. They must go to Sessions to break up the traffic. Now, keep in mind that the commercial zoning kind of works here. So if you have driveways exiting in this direction, you're already on commercial property on both sides of the road. So you're anticipating that there's going to be a little bit more congestion, so to speak.
Okay.
Commissioner York?
Thank you. That was one of mine as well. Just wanted to confirm for us and everybody in the room that the TxDOT is just a recommendation and doesn't actually force them to do anything. I think that's been made clear. The other thing I want to confirm, or have you confirm, Andrew, is with this special permit recommendation, is it true, if they had platted the regular way, Sessions doesn't get widened, right? They're not required to build 40 feet of pavement with regular platting requirements because the pavement exists, right? So with this special permit, you're getting a wider street out of the developer. Is that accurate?
I would say there's a difference between what the code says and what past decisions have been made. When I started with the city, it was always what you plat, what you touch, you have to improve. Now, there have been developments as the decision ultimately was made before platting occurred that some lesser widths would be accepted. And I'll give you an example. Lipes, that's adjacent to Veterans Memorial High School, was for a half street for years. Now that Veterans is probably approaching its 4th, 5th anniversary. Now that the development is occurring to the south, the other half of the road is being constructed on the south side of it. So it's becoming a true 4-lane as it was supposed to. If we held hard and fast to the rule, that would happen across the city. But there are some scenarios in which an applicant has applied and we would have said, the half street already exists, you don't have to build the other half. That happens far and few between today than it did before, and that was the decision of directors going 10 years into the past. That's more of a legal argument of what the code says, but I've always been of the opinion, when you plot what you touch, you must improve.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, I have a few questions. So, just to recap, the total size of this property is right about 14 acre, correct?
The total size of the request is 10. What our staff recommendation, though, just to use the slide on the screen, what is being requested is roughly this area that you see in red. Our recommendation is that it be the entirety, including
So the
4
applicant is
acres.
requesting to get 280 units on the 10 acre?
The applicant is requesting, they're not specifically saying 280. What they're asking for is the RM1 and RM2 district in this property, what you see in yellow. So that works out to 258, meaning at face value, if you were to recommend approval, 258 units, plus or minus when you get through buffer yards and easements and parking and everything else, is what maximum build-out would look like per code. What we are recommending is that if you want to go to 280, then we would recommend that that be broken up over 14 acres rather than clustering 258 in 10.
Which I understand completely. So the hypothetical idea of getting an RM1 or RM2 on this property is pretty slim to none. I mean, it's pretty inconsistent with what the surrounding property is. And again, based on the numbers you're presenting, yes, assuming that was the case, or that would, be recommended by this body, kind of make a difference. But in my calculation, if they have the 4.7 acre on the CN1, which gives them a 37 units, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Gives them 166 units plus or minus. And then the remaining 9 acre, which is residential, is about a 45, 47 houses that they can get, 5 to 6 units. So to get the 280 units, that's a big gap. And in your presentation, you mentioned about the traffic concern. You mentioned that the applicant did a one-day traffic
Count.
count.
Correct.
Is
Yes,
what
sir.
I want to say it properly, which that doesn't really constitute an actual traffic study. Was the staff recommended them to do an actual traffic study to really figure out what a project like this will do?
Sure. So, anytime you're going to have a use that creates, as a traffic generator, we would encourage a traffic impact analysis. Now, there's a fine line between encouraging and requiring. The UDC today, and this goes back from when the UDC was adopted in 2010, set the bar at 500 peak hour trips, meaning you must cross that magic threshold of 501 peak hour, either AM or PM, to require a traffic impact analysis. This nowhere was near where we were in the low or in the mid hundreds, just under 200. On a good day, it was 163 peak hour trips was the highest number it achieved. Nowhere near 501. So I cannot require a
So
traffic
for
impact
clarification,
analysis.
they're not required to have the
Correct.
traffic study. Okay. In terms of the infrastructure, although it's not the purview of this body, those requirements that you mentioned, especially with the Interstate 37 and the road, is this something that obviously will be part of this project, assuming that they get the special permit, correct? Like to expand the road?
As we
Section
go
road?
through plotting, of course, that we will continue that conversation of if that coordination is occurring. Granted, that is why we use the word coordinating instead of requiring, because we cannot mandate another governmental entity to say yes or no to any of our recommendations.
One more question. On RM1, how many units they can get per acre? On an RM1?
RM1 is 22 units per acre. And just so, it's something I always have to remember. It's RM1 is 22, RM2 is 30, RM3 is 36, and it goes up in scale. I'm happy to say in our UDC proposed amendments, we will be getting rid of densities because it's one of those things that it creates, I know why the intent existed, and it probably made sense in the 80s, doesn't really quite make sense in 2022. It hinders on having the mix of different types of multifamily. In today's world, we think multifamily, we think apartments. In reality, newer developments that are coming in are a mix of cottages, are a mix of townhomes, are a mix of apartments, all duplexes. So having that density count has actually hurt more in the short term than it's helped. But as of the code today, 22 units in RM1, 30 units in RM2.
Which if they would had overall zoning of, again, apartments for 14 acres, that would be 307 units. And they're asking for 280. Okay, just getting some numbers. Commissioner Matagi.
So given if they fix sessions up to city standards or right now we're assuming that everybody that's going to be coming here is 37 North and
Correct. So on the wider scale, McKenzie curves and comes back to 37 here. The frontage road continues in this direction, so it creates almost a small loop.
yeah. So yeah, if you want to exit and go 37 south, you could
Go
go
to McKenzie. Yes, sir.
if you're working in Allen and you're coming home.
Correct. Hence the need for a TIA. So a TIA would take those exact conditions.
You can't predict where these people are going to work.
Correct. Exactly.
It seems like we're just assuming that every single person coming here is 5 and 37 North wants to come.
And that's fair. That's a fair statement. Yes, sir.
Any other question for staff at this time? None? Okay. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing. Is the applicant here? Would you like to speak first or last? Before we start, for the sake of the time, I just want to make sure everyone will get 3 minutes time because we do have a lot of people that would like to speak. So for the sake of the time, we will get 3 minutes to talk about it. So that being said, please state your name and number.
Murray.
Your address, please.
Murray Hudson, represent the developer. I'm at 104 Pine Valley, Portland, Texas. As Andrew has pointed out, we are wanting to develop apartments. We want to develop 280 apartment units on the property on the 14 acres. We recognize that we're not going to get the RM1, RM2. We're in agreement with the city's recommendation to do the special permit. We met with staff to work out a compromise that would allow us to do that. Part of that compromise was, as Mr. York pointed out, normally platting up against a developed road, the city doesn't allow half-street construction, and so we would dedicate the right-of-way but not be required to develop our half of the street because they don't allow half-street construction. That's what Andrew was referring to has been the past practice for eons. Well, we came to the city and said, okay, if we're willing to improve the street and make it, rebuild it, redo the profile, put down new base, new hot mix, make the street an acceptable street, a new street, then that would be one way we could get staff to help us make the development happen. So the developer has agreed to rebuild Sessions Road from his north boundary to the highway, although he doesn't have to. That was something we were willing to do to try and get the city to come on board with us, staff to come on board with us. We also reduced the number of units we were wanting to do to 280, again, to work with staff to make the development happen. So that said, we're in agreement with the special permit. That's what we want to do. I would also say from a traffic standpoint, as Andrew pointed out, the CN1 under the IDM allows 4,000 to 8,000 ADT. We're well under that with our proposed development. The existing development as CN1 and RS6 and the existing residential exceeds 3,000 ADT already. What we're proposing at 280 units will be 3,300 ADT, so we're right in the same range as it would be as it exists today if we were to fully develop it. And so that was the goal of what we went in there to do, was to say, okay, we've got CN1, we can do 37 units to the acre there. We've got RS6, we can do 5 units to the acre there, and we've got the existing, that's about 3,500 ADT as it exists. What do we have to do in apartments that would roughly equal that amount of ADT, average daily trips? And that was the 280 units. Thank you. I'm here
Thank
to
you.
answer any questions.
Does
if you
anyone have
any.
any question for the applicant representative? No? Okay, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please state your name and address for the record. And again, keep in mind that you have 3 minutes.
Daryl Keach, 10834 Juliana, and I'd submitted a presentation with some photos. They said they were going to queue up.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. There you are, sir.
I'll skip through in the interest of time. I just want to note that in the agenda that was posted, they only had like 12% or 3 homeowners that opposed. I had mailed my opposition back, but it wasn't reflected. I was property number 31, and I know there are other homeowners here that had mailed theirs back that I don't think were reflected, and I suspect we're probably at the 20%. Just want to make sure that that's noted. I'm going to skip ahead. Sessions is not at 20 feet wide. Photos here show that it's actually less than 17 feet. Went out and actually measured it. I live at Juliana and Sessions, so even though it may be officially 20 feet, it is not. And you can see from the photos, due to erosion, and then even if the pavement was not eroding away, it is not 20 feet wide. There's also a very narrow bridge or drainage section, so even if the developer came back and made it even 20 feet wide, you're not going to be able to get traffic along this road safely. Which is traveled by buses from 2 different school districts, travel up and down Sessions. Both Cal Island and Toloso Midway both have buses that run up and down Sessions Road. And in fact, the Cal Island school bus has to make not a U-turn, but has to back up to go up and down. The school district line is actually on Sessions Road. So also, if the developer didn't want to expand this road to make C1 collector, this is using the centerline GIS of the city. that you can see the right-of-way is actually in homeowners' yards. When this road was built, before it was annexed, the blue is actually using GIS to show where the right-of-way would have to actually extend on both sides of the road. And as Mr. Demas pointed out, a lot of the traffic from those of us that live here drive through McKenzie, not to 37. And so the homeowner, you couldn't just extend Sessions just along the subject property. You would need to widen Sessions all the way back to McKenzie, which there's other homeowners that would, I guess, have to sell their property or agree to give it up to widen Sessions to get to McKenzie, not only to widen it to 37. So it's not realistic to widen Sessions to meet C1 standards either direction. And there's also a large waterway defined by the city that's a drainage that cuts through, that's got two 72-inch water lines or drainage that go through here, which is, it's a large volume of water that cuts through. And you can see the picture on the left is what cuts through that nobody has addressed in this property. That's why it's in two different zoning requests, I believe, that cuts through, that drains under 37. You can see on the picture on the right as it comes through, goes under Sessions and goes through this property. So if you built this out with a large impermeable base that's an apartment complex, what's going to happen to all that water as it drains here and then goes on to the people that live in Guth Park or Guth Park Street? How is all that water going to be addressed, or is it going to flow back here onto those of us that live on Juliana? Additionally, when the owner of Ariba built a house that backs up here on Juliana, he essentially built a bulkhead from the amount of water that flows through that ditch. This was the back of his property. So I think that even the special permit that they're requesting should be denied for all those unsafe reasons. Thank you.
If you would please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Tara Milet, and I live at 3929 Motts. Unfortunately, I was 200 feet beyond the notifications about this rezoning, which I find unfortunate that Nueces Town and Castle River and Castle Ridge were not notified, seeing as that when the traffic gets off at McKenzie, where they're going to be going through will be McKenzie, which the speed limit is 30, but people already go through there at 55, 60 miles an hour. Plus, if you get off at McKenzie, we already have a huge apartment complex that feeds getting off to McKenzie. We also have the Joe Fulton semis that come around that corner anytime, 15 to 30 a day that I've seen come across around that corner to that exit. So not only going to be exiting, and at 4:30 on, exiting to Violet, they back up from the light all the way to the exit ramp. So you're taking your life into your own hands trying to get out of session at that time. Plus, in the morning, you have the morning traffic, too, that is very difficult. Why do we not travel down Sessions? Because it's very unsafe. There are children that stand on that street to catch the bus in the dark in the morning. So if it's not widened and sidewalks are put in, you guys will be responsible for a child being hit by all the traffic going through. So if somebody comes to that apartment complex and the traffic is backed up on the access road, they're going to go down McKenzie right through the neighborhoods. So you better be putting speed bumps in there too, and be watching for the kids that are waiting for the school bus that are waiting down there. This was not brought up to the neighborhoods that were going to be affected, because I guarantee you, we had a block party for Halloween, and I had 38 just in Nueces Town tell me that they oppose this because the traffic that it's going to bring. And also, too, we already have problems with traffic coming down Sessions all the way to the river, of people that don't even live there that come speeding down there. So this is going to bring a whole bunch more traffic down there, and the unsafe that is happening. We need more affordable housing. This is not the place for it, not in Cal Island. I work both TM and Cal Island school districts. They're busting at the seams. They'll find place for the kids, but this is not the place for this housing in this community. I've lived here for 25 years. This is not the place for it. It's unsafe. There's going to be accidents. And putting up a divider like Everhard or what you have out at 5 Points, people run over that stuff all the time. Statistically, if you look at the city, if there's a fatal accident in this city, it happens on 37 between McKenzie and Calicote Road. Those are the statistics in this city. That's where the fatalities happen because of the speed that goes on 37, north or south. So we definitely need to take a long-term plan on the traffic and what this is going to do. And if you close down the exit to Violet, you're just going to back up McKenzie, and you're going to be putting all that traffic into the LULAC apartments, the other apartments that are there, plus you're going to be putting them into all the semis coming off of the Joe Fulton corridor, which is going to cause accidents.
Thank you, ma'am. Please state your name and
Daniel
address for the
Falcon.
record.
I wanted to say something about where that lady was telling the truth. Those people, I lived there for 22 years, right on Sessions Road, that trailer park. I'm the owner of that trailer park right there, that this planned thing is going to be adjacent to. And, you know, as far as widening the road, I don't know how you're going to widen the road, because that thing's going to go through people's yards. I mean, you got to take down the fence and cut big, giant trees. You can't do it. I mean, it's impossible to widen the road down there. And when two pickup trucks go down that road, they're just about slapping mirrors. They're just, you know, you really got to watch it and go real slow so you don't slap mirrors. And she's right. There is truck drivers that get lost to get on into McKenzie Road, and now they got to make this big, giant curve, and they got to go real slow. And people go there, and they travel 50, 60 miles an hour sometimes. You get these hot rod Challengers and Mustangs with the loud pipes, and they want to just wail it out down there at all hours of the night. And you got an apartment complex, you're going to have accidents. You're going to have some big accidents. And she's right. That around work time, when people get out of work, that traffic is backed up from Violet Road all the way to the exit. And it's just going to be a mess. And people get impatient, and they just jut out there, and people blowing their horns and getting aggravated with each other. And that's now a 250-unit apartment. I mean, you got to think too. You know, what are you doing to the people's property? There was just a subdivision just built within the last few years. Those houses are between $200,000 and $300,000. We don't want that stuff. The cops are going to be busy going to that apartment house. You get all these people. You seen that kid on TV. They chased him all over the apartment. He was hiding. There's going to be a lot of crime there. There's going to be drugs. And the values of the neighborhood, of that property and that neighborhood, which is upper middle class, is going to drop like a rock. And I don't think that's fair that you can go in there just because you have some big developer with a lot of money, and he goes in there and he just, you know, devastates the whole neighborhood. And it's going to be dangerous for traffic, and it's going to be a crime problem. And right now, that neighborhood is quiet. And I got people living there. They say, you know what I like about this place? It's really quiet. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood. There's hardly no crime at all. Just absolutely almost nothing. You know, the worst thing that's going on is you get a Chihuahua that barks, you know, and they get them barking at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And mostly people respect their neighbors and take into consideration that they're disturbing somebody else, and they'll take the dog in the house. But it's a nice neighborhood. With this kind of apartment thing, you're going to have people going in and out of there all hours of the night. Young people, drugs are going to be going in there, and they're just going to make it a mess.
Thank you.
Cameron, I had a quick question, because there was a note from one of the previous speakers about notifications and responses being sent back that weren't counted. So,
Plan to talk to Andrew about.
do we have a count? I mean, did you mail your response back?
No, I didn't. I'm very busy, really busy.
Okay.
Do all the labor management, everything that's going on. I just kind of looked at the thing, okay, I'm going to meet 5:30 today, and I didn't fill it out, no.
Okay.
So, let's just. Okay. If you could please keep it calm and quiet and one at a time, please, speaking. Next person that would like to speak, please. So, Mr. Dimas, could you please address this issue? Because obviously, we're a body for deciding on the zoning and change of zoning. In terms of you receiving or not receiving your notices and how that works out, I'm pretty sure the staff will be glad to explain exactly what has happened to make sure everything is good. But Whoever would like to speak regarding this item, please.
Just for, as you requested, Mr. Chair, the ring you see on the screen is the area of notification, meaning properties within 200 linear feet in every direction of the boundary of the subject property are those that would have received a letter in the mail. Of course, once it leaves our office, the Postal Service becomes in charge of that and delivers. And of course, there is a transit time, so if folks have mailed it later, then as we approach Planning Commission, they might be in our mailbox right now. But if those that we receive, even after this hearing, will still be counted towards the percentage. So those opinions are not lost as we approach City Council.
It's just for the sake of the argument, I'm pretty sure we can agree we have more than 3 people that are opposed to this. So I just want to make sure that, to their concern, that the notices to the appropriate parties within the 200 feet has been sent and mailed out.
Yes.
Because we constantly have this concern from
Yes,
residents coming
in fact, we've sent out multiple notices because as dates have changed, so multiple notices were sent out to this same 200-foot ring. But I will call the mailroom first thing in the morning to see if any others have been received.
Okay, thank you. If you would please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Freda Martin, F-R-E-D-D-A, and I live at 10829 Silverton Drive. And I'm looking at the map, and I should have, because I'm only one house in, so the corner house and then me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, on Silverton, which is one back from McKinsey and one up from Grand Teton. Okay, and I have never received anything from the city.
So
if
this is something that I would request that you can get with the staff after this. If there is any concern or question
Sure
you
will
have
do.
regarding the item
Because
itself, please share your thoughts with us.
I'm very much opposed to this.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
opposed to it because of not only the traffic, we've already beaten Sessions to death, okay? But my concern is on property values, okay? I'm not a young chicken, so I'm there to live till death do I part, okay? But there are a lot of people who are there, this is their first house, they're going to advance, they're going to move again. They don't want their property values. I'm sorry, sir, but that's
If you
what
would keep it
happens.
toward the
Okay?
commission, please, as you speak.
Okay, but I don't want my property value to drop, okay? I don't want their property values to drop. Another concern I have is emergency vehicles, all right? Coming down Sessions, we usually, most emergency calls are answered right now by the Annabelle volunteer, okay, or the city, and those are some big trucks that come flying in there, and, you know, if they're going to have difficulty getting in and around, and when you add another 280 units, okay, how are they going to get in and out in the access? That's another concern that y'all may have, and I do stand opposed to this. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Dennis Cooper. I live at 10821 Silverton Drive. I also never received any notification, but I'm probably about 150 feet from Sessions. So I think there needs, my neighbor over there, Paz, he lives directly across, so he lives 17 feet away, and he never received one either. So you may want to resend those out. I have some issues with this apartment complex. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, there was 145 potholes on Silverton Drive. Now, these are repaired potholes. Additionally, there are 24 potholes that need repaired, like now. I'm concerned about the crime. I have been on Christi TV with my vehicle being broken into with a young man with a 9mm.
So what I would say respectfully, if you have any concern regarding the item itself, the fact of a crime or anything like this.
I'm
is not
concerned about
something
the
that-
crime. I'm concerned about the traffic.
Traffic,
How
okay.
is the city going to continuously be able to maintain Silverton Drive? They're not maintaining it right now. I did send an email to the city engineer about 2 years ago. It just fell on deaf ears that the whole street needs to be basically ripped up and replaced. Mackenzie, I don't know why, but Silverton Drive gets half the traffic that Mackenzie does, for whatever reason. People think it's a shortcut. That road is being torn up left, right, and center. And that's pretty much it. I'm opposed against it. Property values, crime, street conditions, lighting. Our street is completely pitch black at night. We've already had, problems with crime in the past, and it's ongoing right now. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to make a quick comment before the next person want to speak. While I do understand the level of concern for all the residents about, the issue about the apartment complex, and I would like to hear that, please note that this body does not handle crime or anything in that nature. I mean, we are a recommended body for approving or disapproving the zoning of this case. So love to hear your concerns about that is coming in, but some of the other things that is not related necessarily to the zoning of this case, I would want to omit that due to the timing. So please come forward, speak.
If I could add to that issue, somebody brought up drainage and traffic infrastructure. Our body also doesn't handle that. Those would be addressed at the next stage when they get into platting and engineering, so that will actually get reviewed. So just want y'all to know that still has to go through. It does have to be engineered, but we don't control any of that.
My name's Homer Mendoza. I'm on the next street, Guth Road. It's right past Sessions. We don't have no drain down our street at all, no drainage or nothing. The water just gathers up back there. We don't have no issues, but I've seen a lot of accidents in that where these people were talking about when they get off, because I live right there. Coming off the freeway, man, I've seen a lot of accidents. So that's all it's dangerous. If they're gonna have to leave, they're gonna have to go out through their neighborhood, and they're not gonna like going out the back through Mackenzie. But coming out the Sessions is too dangerous.
Yes, sir.
And what that picture don't show is there are hills like this that come out. When you get off the freeway, the people are trying to come into that street, and it's kind of dangerous, but that's all I want to put.
Thank you.
My name is Corinne Hayes. I live at 838 Silverton Drive. I just kind of want to reiterate what I am one of these single mom homes in this area. I am on the corner of Silverton and Sessions. My son is 11 years old, and he rides the bus, and it is very dangerous. And for somebody to want to put in this amount of apartments in this area, I'm all for development and all of these things, but this is not the area. Our neighborhood is very quiet, and we try to keep it safe. We all kind of stick together. You can see us. We trick or treat. My son and his friends, they come to this area, and there is a high level of traffic. And he mentioned the potholes and the hills and all of these things. Sessions is, I've already been hit coming off of the interstate and trying to use Sessions. I don't even go that way anymore. It's completely dangerous. I drive an Explorer. It's not a big vehicle, and I still have to pull off onto the side of Sessions in order to pass another vehicle, which is constant all the time. If you go that way, somebody is going to get hurt. We have joggers that jog that area, and it's very, very dangerous. I'm surprised somebody hasn't been hit yet. But I am worried about my son and the other students, and I'm a teacher at Tolosa Midway. I am worried constantly about these kids that sin on the side of Sessions. And if you put apartments there and you have 250 units and you have maybe 3 to 4 people per, that's thousands of people that we don't need in this area with already the traffic and everything else going on.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Judy Blackwell. I live at 10834 Grand Teton. I'm at the corner of Sessions and Grand Teton, toward the back portion of this property that we're discussing. And if they are going to widen Sessions Road, they're going to be in my yard, and I'm not for that. And I have a big issue with safety because the children getting on the bus, they stop at every corner, and the buses do. And the children get on, and in the afternoon, they get off. And you cannot, I know you're not supposed to pass a bus, but even if you had to, there is not enough room on that street for you to pass. I mean, if it was an emergency vehicle or whatever, they'd have to wait for the bus to have children on or off before they could even get by. And, you know, I don't know how they're going to address the drainage issue. If you could see, when we have rain, that water flows down beside my house and flows down Sessions Road into that ravine that goes underneath Sessions Road, and which is the dividing part that they have that line drawn there. And where that water has to go, if they
Again, ma'am,
block
this
it.
body does not deal with the drainage system. I mean, this is something that goes through the planning process. Once the permitting goes through with the city
Okay.
and engineering,
Well,
this
that's-
body is only responsible for zoning cases. So we would love to hear more of your concerns about anything regarding the zoning, and especially due to the
Well,
time. I would
I
appreciate
sent
it.
my paperwork in and opposed it, and I hope that it was received. But if it wasn't, be it on record that I'm opposed to it.
Okay? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Tomlinson. I live at 10834 Silverton Drive. I'm here just to vehemently oppose this development. What I see, I've been working at home for the last 3 years, working remotely, you know, because of the COVID, and just carried on. But I'm up and down Sessions a lot. And I see the kids standing out there, and what it appears to be is a lot of drivers from Nueces Town come down McKenzie and use Sessions as a shortcut to get to the freeway. Now, why they do that, I don't know, but a lot of it is at very high speeds. The Sessions Road is so eroded down each side when you have to meet two cars head on, you know, you got to get over, you try to get over, you know, it'll eat your tires up. I'm talking big potholes, you know, and I'm not even talking about the ones in the middle of the road, just the erosion on each side. So the widening would be a necessity for sure. However, I think adding this many units would severely decrease the safety in our neighborhood, especially if we're adding that many units. We're going to be adding a bunch more kids that are going to be standing out there on the roads waiting for the bus too. Okay? So I'm here just to speak in opposition. I'm not going to talk about property values because we know what's going to happen. I do have a question, and I don't know if you can answer this or if the developer can answer this, but how much of this would be Section 8 housing versus standard single-family dwellings? I mean, you know, multifamily dwellings.
I'm not aware of any of that question, but I can ask and make sure clarify that from the developer once we speak with them.
Because crime is a major concern, I think, from everyone in the neighborhood. You know, just, it's a quiet little neighborhood. If they're going to develop it, you know, why don't we just put in single-family dwellings there, you know, instead of high-rise apartments?
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item? Applicant, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Vic Nazari with MVR Construction Company. From what I hear, everybody's concern is session. It's not wide enough. It's 17. If two cars come and go, one has to stop for the other one to go. We're here to actually improve that. Whether it's an apartment complex, a housing, a hotel, which is allowed in the frontage, we're here to go ahead and improve session to make sure all their concern is actually resolved. And if it's dangerous for one party, it's going to be dangerous for everybody, whether it's apartments, housing, hotel, it doesn't matter. The danger is there for everybody. But everybody's concerned, I heard drainage, we're going to improve that. The road, we're going to improve that. The potholes that's on Session are going to be all paved brand new. And please understand that whether it's an apartment or not, the corner is zoned commercial. You could build a 5-6-story hotel over there, build 170 rooms that creates more traffic than an apartment complex. Single-family dwelling creates more traffic than an apartment complex. So the concerns they have, we hear them, but I hope they understand that what we're proposing will help with the concerns they're facing today. And no, it will not be any government housing or Section 8. These will be market value. This is going to be a $35 million apartment complex that's going to serve Portland, Sinton, Corpus Christi, and the Cal Island and Annabelle district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? None, I will call. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Andrea Tomlinson, and I live at 10834 Silverton Drive. My biggest concern is safety. I see the children standing on the corner and the bus, and I think you said you're going to widen the road. I'm not sure. I think previously it's been said that the property lines would go into people's yards, so I don't know how you're going to widen it.
If you would please speak toward the commission, please.
Okay, I don't know how we're going to widen the road when we're going to take away people's properties. So I'm sure maybe there needs to be another meeting about this, because it sounds to me like Sessions is maybe not able to be widened, which then, if that's the case, brings us back to where it is now, and that I don't think it's wide enough or safe enough to potentially be able to accommodate the increase in traffic. The buses that would be, the school buses that would be going up and down that street, and the safety of the children, really. I mean, I travel it, and, you know, there's ditches, and I have to be careful just driving it without there being a lot of traffic coming my way. So I just want to say I'm also opposed to this, only because of the safety and the way the traffic would be routed, whether it be on the frontage road or Mackenzie or Session. It's hard enough as it is right now, and with no other way for the people from the proposed development to enter the frontage road and the freeway, other than going through Sessions, that seems like a no-go to me.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Last call.
Hello, my name is Art Molina. I live at 10826 Overton Drive. My main concern is, he mentioned earlier about being commercial property. Is the whole thing considered commercial property, or just the front part of it?
No, sir, the 4.7 acre of the track is
Okay, I know we have a lot of questions, and a lot of people are talking about the concerns about Sessions widening. My concern that Andrew mentioned earlier, one of the photos, was that people coming off of Violet, making a right turn on Sessions, and then coming back out. You mentioned something about Weber having those little prong things in the middle of the road. That's very dangerous. How are people going to get on from Sessions? They're going to try to get on 37 when there's already traffic backed up all the way up to the exit ramp. That's going to be more of I think, a hazard. Another thing is that they're going to have to come back to our neighborhood, back around to Mackenzie, like he said, on Silverton. There's already potholes that can be covered. There's going to be more traffic and all that stuff. And of course, our concerns about the kids in the morning, afternoon, evening. and things like that. Of course, they're talking about developing and widening the road, taking people's property or using the property for whatever, they need to be, it needs to be done. My concern is just about exiting off and getting back on 37.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item? None, I will close the public hearing at this time and entertain some questions. I do have some questions for staff, but commissioners, do you have any questions first? Commissioner Miller.
Is the additional right-of-way dedication, does that necessarily have to be from the center line?
That is from the center line. That's I'm glad you brought it up. That was going to be my first clarification. Right-of-way dedication is not taking anyone's property. For instance, all the property that's in front of our homes is city right-of-way, meaning it's not my property, it's city property that I'm required to maintain. But the half street that exists today is center line, meaning the vast majority of dedication and construction is going to be onto the applicant's property. There's not going to be a widening on the opposite side of the street of Sessions.
So Sessions is currently a half street.
Is all the way against, essentially, if you can imagine a wide 40-foot right-of-way, Sessions is the right half of it. The left half, dedication construction, will be on the applicant's
And
property.
the current right-of-way dedication is, for that current half street is how much?
It is roughly it is not a consistent measurement, as one of the commenters brought up. At its widest, it's roughly about 20 feet. There are portions that does dip below that as pavement has eroded.
But the actual, so I'm drawing, let me draw this out real quick. What's the actual right-of-way dedication as it sits right now?
As a C1, it would be 60 feet.
So that right-of-way is already dedicated now?
No, it is not dedicated. As it exists today, it is 40.
So right now
I have
we've
a
got,
profile for you.
I think what he's asking, if it's 40 feet today, how much of that, is it 40 feet center?
For the
No,
most
it's-
part, the 43 feet of its existing is further to the existing neighborhood, meaning the majority of the dedication, vast majority, is going to be on the left-hand side of the street onto the applicant's property to make up the 60.
so you're only going to need an additional 10 feet of dedication, or
It's 43 feet,
40
more or less,
feet.
right now,
so you're going to need an additional 10 foot of dedication into,
the applicant's property.
well, I'm seeing by what I understood you just said, it would be 20 feet for the additional road and then another 10 feet for beyond the
Correct.
edge of pavement.
Right-of-way and pavement section, so
So-
that's layered.
For the existing property owners that own properties that abut Sessions, on the other side, I guess on the east side of Sessions Road, the dedication, additional dedication into their current properties is going to be an additional 10 feet.
No, there should not be any additional dedication onto the existing neighborhood. When the plat comes in, to make up the 60-foot right-of-way, the dedication will have to come onto
Okay.
the responsibility of the applicant. So no further road is going to encroach onto their property.
But in that scenario, where the edge of pavement is on the existing road would be the edge of the right-of-way, correct?
Would be the edge of the pavement section. So there's two big numbers. There's right-of-way, which is 60 feet, and then there is pavement section of what is literal asphalt. That has to be onto the applicant's side of the road.
I get all that, but I need to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying. Right now, let's just call it 20 feet for the sake of argument. There's 20 foot of pavement going down Sessions. And you've got a total 40 foot right of way now, so that would be 10 foot on one side and 10 foot on the other of the existing pavement, right?
Correct.
So if you're going to have to add an addition, you're going to have to not take, but dedicate an additional 10 feet into the neighboring, into those properties of these people out here, correct?
Assuming the center line is the entirety of the pavement section. The center line is more to the grassy area. It's not an exact half. It does undulate from portions, so you may have some drainage area that has to be a little widened on the property, but keep in mind that is property that has already been dedicated at the time of plat for the neighborhood. So it's not their property, it has already been dedicated for right-of-way.
But if you currently have 40 feet and you're going to require 60 feet, I still don't know how you make up that additional footage. I know you're saying it comes out of the applicant's property, but if you're saying that the existing road was built as a half road, I just can't visualize that in my head, but
I think it's worth noting that all of that will come before us at the next stage in plating, and we'll be able to see all of that.
Correct. The cross
I think he's
sections.
made it pretty clear, they're not gonna they can't take anybody's land that's existing, so it's gonna be dedicated in the applicant's property, but we'll be able to see all of that in detail on the plat at the next stage.
Correct.
And that kind of brings me back around to wanting to take Sheldon Strader's guidance and reminding everybody that's here what we do as a planning commission. And what we have to look at is the zoning that's being requested and look at it, how appropriate that zoning is for this particular area. And what we do as a body is we look at the future land use map and how the city planners have kind of laid out this area. And right now, and I also wanted to point out something else. I think the applicant made a misstatement about the existing zoning on the CN1 property. So I'm seeing that as CN1, correct?
The front portion, what you'll see on the screen, this portion is zone CN1.
Because I heard a statement that, I can build a high-rise hotel on that property.
You can build a hotel on CN1.
But high-rise?
The height restriction for CN1, I'll have to pull up my UDC for that. But it would be for a non-residential, the one thing you would come into play, very much like the story I told about the Navy Army building, why it was capped at a certain height was because of the 2-to-1 setback. So that is another, so it's a 35-foot height limitation in the CN1.
Yeah, so 35 feet gets you almost 3 stories.
3 stories.
Yeah, max. So high-rise, not so much, 3-story.
Capacity though, so
Yes.
you may not be taller, but you could be wider.
Right, okay. But those were my only comments and questions.
Andrew, one of my concern, obviously, I have no doubts that the applicant has all good intention to provide a very great project to build it. But the concern that the residents have regarding not receiving the notice and making sure that they have been notified promptly kind of concerns me. And I do want to make sure that regarding zonings, and I know that for sure that staff have sent and does do what is properly done to make sure every resident or every homeowner surrounding any subject property regarding any zoning receives a notice. But this is a continuous issue that sometimes we have regarding some of the cases like this. And obviously we have a lot of concerning families here, that there are definitely more than 3 people that oppose to this zoning. And how do we verify, how do we make sure that the people that they have or they should have received it? Because I want to make sure that the public understands and knows that the notices sent promptly to right addresses and so forth. And obviously, I don't have all the information, and I want to bring that conversation up because I know it was I kept commenting on it, making notes on it. It was a comment from everybody. And could you kind of talk about an addresses real quick, please?
So the list that we receive on who to mail comes from our GIS division. As I showed on the map, there's 200 foot of a radial measurement around the subject property, which creates this.
A lot of people that came in and said that the notice said they lived on.
It actually is, Javid, I think this street at the very top, and
Look right here, you got the two, and then the L. You get these 2 houses right here, and Tutton, but then that's it. Silverton is right on the other side of the line.
I looked at it differently.
Sorry, go
So
ahead.
it's 200 feet, it's like anything else, it's easy to say, I'm within 200 feet. Folks really don't always know what exactly 200 feet is. 200 feet is not a lot, first
is
and
not a lot,
foremost. It is
but-
not a lot. That is based on state law, so it's not,
Because those
city
two
didn't invent 200 feet and just said, that's the magic number we went with. 200 feet is based very much in the Texas Local Government Code of what is required for a notification area. We receive a list from Nueces County Appraisal District. That is where the data originates of who is the current owner. Not renter, not customer, not person who's staying in their aunt's extra bedroom. Who is the owner? The owner will receive the notice. If the owner fails to inform a renter that they received a notice, that communication we can't control. We cannot control if the mailbox was available. That's the Postal Service. When it leaves our office and goes to the post office, that is at the time in which the city no longer has control of who receives the notice. It is 100% in the hands of the Postal Service. I can tell you with every zoning case, there's at least one person that says, I didn't get my notice. It's,
Yes, if you could please let the staff discuss it. I just want to clarify this. That's why I brought it.
and I believe me, I empathize with the frustration. I've had zoning in my neighborhood, and I was right on the line of 200 feet, so I didn't receive a notice as much as I felt I should have. So I get it, believe me, firsthand. But I can tell you that
You didn't know about it?
before my time with the city.
Okay.
And so that is why we
And I
post,
bring this up because I do want to make sure that the public knows that we as a body here go based on the information that we do receive.
the purpose, I would add, the purpose of public notice is to inform the public.
Absolutely.
Obviously, they're informed. They're here.
They're here.
So the word got around.
Yes.
They were informed. The sign,
I have closed the public hearing, so please.
the case will be published in the newspaper, so it's in the classified section. A sign is posted on the property, big bold letters, notice for public hearing. Several signs were posted because the date changed a few times. So signs were replaced with new dates on it. So Word did achieve its goal of notifying the public. But again, 200 feet is not a lot of room, and I'll be the first to admit that. We've discussed as part of our amendment, should we change that 200 feet? At the end of the day, those are the folks that will receive the notice in the mail. And as much as I wish I could control when something reaches the Postal Service and I can get a read receipt that somebody read it like a text message, I can't. I don't know if it got to their mailbox, if it was rained on, if it didn't get delivered, it fell out of the mailbag. It's a yellow flyer that's very easy to lose, very easy to get stuck to other mail, and may have accidentally been discarded. I know it's troublesome. We are looking at different ways that we can increase our visibility and transparency. Do we want to go to an internet-based, put QR codes on the signs? Those are all things that we've been talking about to try to increase public notification. But letter of the law is signs, newspaper, 200 feet of notice.
Got it. Thank you. So a couple of the concerns from the families, residents are the public safety and traffic. Obviously, is this something that, in this particular project, the staff overall have looked at it, knowing that the Session Road is pretty narrow, with the concerns of expanding it, the concerns with the text dot that you brought up, and overall, was there discussions with the applicant in terms of the number of units or other adjustments or alternative that can accommodate a win-win situation for everyone?
That is
A better way of me
the
saying it?
purpose of the special permit was coming up with a compromise. Of course, we take public safety into consideration. There's not a time in which we as city, actively conspire to say, how can we put a bad use in a neighborhood? Of course not. We want to see a use that will provide housing, needed housing that we have a desperate need in this city for, in an area near a major intersection. We have incoming industry that is going to increase that housing demand. So obviously, there are going to be undeveloped areas of the city that have not been touched in decades that are now primed for redevelopment. Now, with redevelopment comes improvement to drainage. It comes with a new street attached to it. Every issue that you're hearing about potholes and speeding and danger, that's based on a street that exists today. That is not based on an improved roadway that the applicant is willing to install as part of that special permit condition. So yes, you are receiving some additional traffic from an apartment complex, but with that, you're also receiving a brand new right-of-way. So it is not putting another 280 units on a PCI score of 60 road. It is putting it on a brand-new street in which, as we all know during the planning process, the applicant's required to warranty that street. So there is some assurances that during the plat process, they have to improve Sessions to its right-of-way standard.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Miller.
When was the last time this particular area was revisited by ADP?
That was, I can give you an exact date, was 2001. Northwest Plan, was adopted January 1st of '01.
Probably need to get it on the schedule for another look.
It's actually next. So West Side is wrapping up now from the last conversation with the planning department. Northwest and Midtown are next on their schedule.
Okay, thanks.
I got a
Commissioner York?
I got a couple of comments and then I'm ready to make a motion. Just want to say again for everybody that's out in the crowd, two things. One, we're just a recommending body, so however it goes here today, this is going to go to City Council, especially for those who said they mailed in something, maybe it didn't get counted, your percentage not on there. It should get there. If it got there late, maybe it'll be counted probably by the time it gets to Council. Want to make that clear. Other thing is, again, we're here to talk about changing land use. We're changing the zoning, which allows what they can and can't build. We're not addressing drainage and infrastructure. Those will be addressed. They have to submit engineering plans when they go through the platting phase. So I want to make that clear. The most important thing I heard concern was traffic related, and what I heard from the applicant's engineer, if this were to build out the way it's zoned today with CN1 and RS6, it would produce about 3,500 average daily trips. With their proposed 280 units, it's about the same. I know it may not seem like that with today's, it's not developed, but that's, if those are the numbers, those are the numbers. So with that, I will make a motion that we proceed with staff's recommendation to deny the requested zoning in lieu of the special permit presented by staff.
Just as a point of clarification, not to interrupt, that would entail the applicant amending their application to include the
14
totality
acre.
of 14 acres.
And does that need to be on the motion?
Is that written in here, or
bringing-
do we need to say that?
It would have to come back as 14 acres.
So does he need to
Do I need to
revise
amend that
it?
motion I just made?
I would make it clear in your motion that you are motioning on the 14 acres to be amended in an application, not just the 10 that was requested as part of this.
The only action for the board, I guess, is to, whether to approve or deny the current zoning request that's requested. Staff's recommendation is denial of the requested zoning. But if the applicant's willing to come back with a new application or amended application, we're willing to support the special permit with the entirety of the track.
Seems like we all wasted our time here then.
So just for
Can we
clarification.
not figure out a way to do this by, I mean, if staff's making this recommendation to change their zoning request from 10 to 14 acres, can we not figure out a way to let that happen between now and council? Rather than
That's
have
what's been
everybody come back?
advertised, Councilman, Planning Commissioner, that's what's been advertised and pushed forward, so that's what's on the table today.
Has to be renoticed. So all the folks that say they didn't receive a notice, they will get
Another
another
one.
notice in their mail, plus the notice that
Come
goes
back
to city
again and
council.
Do the same thing?
So we have to just basically either deny or accept based on the, okay. So,
So we can't even do the special permit then?
Because it's for the 14 acres. That's why I called it an alternative recommendation. Our recommendation for this case was denial. We presented an alternative for 14 acres.
Can we move to table this and let them amend their zoning?
application, it's gotta be a new app.
Oh, that's
Can we
what
get
I'm asking.
clarification
You're
from Lee?
amending the
Path of least
application.
resistance, can they just change it and change their exhibit to show the 14 acres and be back in 2 weeks
They
or
would
4
have,
or whatever?
they would have to amend their application so we can renotice with the now 14 acres.
Okay, then I'm going to withdraw my motion and make a motion to table this. Is 4 weeks enough?
Yes.
Can we do it in 2? Can you renotice in 2?
So, before you make a motion, could we get clarification that we can table this item? Because you said it has to be a new application to send out for new notices.
We had the
Just wanna
It
make
would
sure.
be an amended application.
Okay. What is the next meeting? I know we've got Thanksgiving.
The next one would be November let's see,
16th.
November 16th.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we table this item to the November 16th Planning Commission meeting.
We have a motion to table this item to the November 16th, and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Very anticlimactic.
Okay.
It's called a cliffhanger, Michael.
So for the record, this item has been tabled to November 16th Planning Commission meeting, which is 2 weeks from now, in regarding the amended applications for the entire 14-acre. Okay, moving on to director report.
There's no report this evening.
Awesome. Any future agenda? Commissioner Miller.
How hard would it be if, whenever you're sending out staff to go stake the notice signs on the subject property, to go and slap something on somebody's door?
I mean, technically you require a peddler's permit to hand out flyers, but it's...
So do I need a peddler's permit for code enforcement to come put a little
They
notice
have
on
to
my
receive
door?
specific training on approaching private property. Yes, they actually do.
Okay.
And they have... Even hanging, the only one that's exempt are campaign flyers. You know, they don't have to receive a permit. But if you're selling door to door, if you're hanging flyers for, you know, carpet cleaning business, you do technically have to have a peddler's permit to do that, to approach private property door to door. It's that the state law doesn't require that door hanger. And then there's a reason for that. As much as I know folks will say 200 feet's not enough or getting it in the mail is not enough, there is a reason that bar was set at that level, probably to avoid folks going door to door. It's not exactly the most hospitable environment that we live in right now. I wouldn't recommend anybody go door to door for anything.
Any other discussion?
There's only $7 a letter.